This is Africa Live. Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Penina Karibia in Nairobi. There's plenty lined up this half hour, including these stories. Undeterred, Egypt Muslim Brotherhood supporters renew their protests in support of Mohamed Morsi. And FIFA delays decision on moving the Qatar World Cup to winter. We begin in Somalia, where Islamist militants say Western forces attacked a house in one of its coastal bases in the town of Barawe under the cover of dark, killing one rebel fighter. It was not immediately clear why the Barawe base had been targeted specifically, nor whether the assault was related to the attack on a Kenyan mall 2 weeks ago, which the Al-Qaeda-linked group claimed responsibility. At least 67 people were killed during that attack. Meanwhile, Kenya Defense Forces made public a video of photo profiles of the armed attackers that took over Westgate Mall. The terrorists, believed to have been 5 during the massacre, were captured by the CCTV cameras at the mall during the operation, and the military intelligence, together with the anti-terrorism police unit, have profiled the identities and linked them to the mall attack. The Kenyan military published the profiles of 2 wanted terrorists and circulated videos the moment the attackers took positions and moved within the mall. One of the profiles is of Abu Baral al-Sudani, whose last known location was Mogadishu and Westgate. Let's now cross live to Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. CCTV's Mohamed Hirmogi joins us now from there. Mohamed, what do we know of the attack in Barawe?
Well, Penina, we understand there was a foreign special forces raid on one of the bases of Al-Shabaab in the southern port town of Barawe, about 180 kilometers south of the capital. We understand one Al-Shabaab commander was killed because the target, as we know, was an Al-Shabaab base, an Al-Shabaab house, where we understand a host of Al-Shabaab operatives have been either hiding or meeting. There are no much information coming out of Barawe. We're only relying on witnesses and residents in Barawe who tells us that Al-Shabaab have since said they have repelled the attack, and according to Al-Shabaab website, they're saying the assault has failed. Up to now, we understand only one Al-Shabaab commander probably has been killed, and a few may have been injured. Though the sources, Western sources, did not reveal the name of probably the big commander who might have been killed in the attack.
So, Mohamed, has there been any reaction from the government over this development?
Well, no, Penina. Actually, the government is trying to get its bearing right on this. About an hour ago, I was with the government spokesman, Engineer Abdurrahman, who told me they're still not aware of what transpired in Barawe in the early hours of Saturday. But the government is aware that indeed there was a raid against the Al-Shabaab in Barawe. Maybe they're trying to figure out who was responsible. But by and large, the government will very much welcome any foreign assault against Al-Shabaab in all the bases in Somalia.
All right, so Mohamed, Kenyan military last night released footage of Al-Shabaab operatives who carried out the attack at the Westgate Mall. Do we know if there is a link between these two events?
Well, we really don't know whether there's a link between the footage released yesterday on the attackers of Westgate Mall, where 67 people have been killed, and which, of course, Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility. But it was expected that after Westgate, there could be a response from probably foreign forces against the Al-Shabaab. Most analysts will say such assaults might continue up to the end of the year. Analysts are quick to put dots together here and tell you that after Westgate, yes, of course, we expect several Al-Shabaab bases to be struck. One other thing people also believe is the Western forces might have been Americans. We understand America has a big training camp in neighboring Djibouti, Camp Lemonet, where about 900 special American forces are there. Therefore, our fingers actually now point to the Americans, and people say these raids might continue.
Well, so, Mohamed, obviously a lot of speculation about this attack. Al-Shabaab blaming the attack on what they're calling foreign forces, Western forces. But also, Mohamed, there have been earlier reports of internal fights within Al-Shabaab. So could this also be an attack by a rival group?
Well, it's quite unlikely because such attack that involves beach landing and also involves helicopters, it's quite unlikely that a rebel faction with Al-Shabaab might have actually carried out the raid, because looking at the magnitude, that rules out there could be any rebel faction within the group that might have been responsible for this. We also understand that rebel factions have been crushed effectively by the ultimate leader of the Al-Shabaab, Ahmed Abdi Golani, who we understand has killed 4 top commanders of the rebel faction within the group. Therefore, there is no possibility that this might have been an inside job within the Al-Shabaab.
All right, we'll be watching those developments closely. Mohammed Chirmoge live in Mogadishu. Thanks for joining us. Let's come back to Kenya. And at least 4 people have died following riots in protest over the killing of a controversial Islamic cleric in Mombasa. Calm has been restored in the city, where angry Muslim youth set fire to a church, burned tires and clashed with police for the better part of Friday. People wounded during the rioting were rushed to a local hospital for treatment. Some appeared in critical condition. The shooting of Sheikh Ibrahim Omar ignited religious tensions in the commercial and tourism hub 2 weeks after Islamist militants killed at least 67 people in a raid on a Nairobi shopping mall. The imam and 3 other men were found dead in a car on Mombasa's outskirts on Thursday night. Police dismissed allegations by Omar's associates and people who attended his mosque that the shooting was part of a crackdown on Muslims after the mall attack or any wider campaign. Ugandan police are standing by an alert issued over the reported entry into the country of a suspected terrorist thought to have links to Al-Shabaab. Local media have raised questions about the supposed presence in Uganda of Ahmed Khalid, a German-born suspected terrorist. CCTV's Isabel Nakiria reports from Kampala.
Uganda is on high alert after the Westgate attack in Nairobi, and police here insist they have credible information to suggest Ahmed Khalid entered the country from Kenya.
This is not his first time to come to Uganda. He came to Uganda some time back with his colleague called Edgan, and when again we got the information that they had already entered Uganda, we publicized them and they took off from Uganda and went to Tanzania.
Police have been forced to respond to questions about their claims that Ahmed Khalid entered the country on a bus. This after the bus company that owns the vehicle police say he was traveling on denied it was on the road cited in the police alert. In fact, Kalita Bus Company have told CCTV that the vehicle has been in garage since 10 September. Local media have also been pointing out that the alert bears striking similarities to one issued for the same man last year. But for now, police said their information on Ahmed Khalid was strong enough to issue a warning to the people of Uganda. Isabel Nakiria, CCTV, Kampala.
In another development, a Somali government spokesman says that his country is working to try and prevent large numbers of migrants heading for Europe. Ridwan Haji Abdiweli was speaking after Thursday's shipwreck off the coast of the Italian island of Lampedusa, in which more than 100 Africans were killed. The scale of Thursday's tragedy, with 100 bodies recovered so far, 155 people rescued, and up to an estimated 250 still missing, according to officials, has prompted demands from Italian officials for a comprehensive European Union immigration policy to deal with the tens of thousands of migrants fleeing poverty and strife in Africa and the Middle East. Thousands attempt the dangerous crossing each year, seeking a new life in the prosperous European Union.
We are very sorry about the incident that took place in Lampedusa. The government of Somalia is sending its condolences to the families and the friends of those. Actually, the government of Somalia is having its own plan to avoid all these kind of immigrations to Europe.
I'm very saddened by what has happened to my fellow Somalis in the Italian beaches. They should not take unnecessary risks and instead remain in our country.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's take our first break. This hour coming up. Undeterred, Egypt Muslim Brotherhood supporters renewed their protests in support of Mohamed Morsi. And youth take a stand to resolve global challenges at the One Youth Summit in South Africa. The daring and savagery of new terror attacks in Kenya and Nigeria pose fresh security challenges for Africa and the wider international community.
We shall not relent on the war on terror.
Excesses of Boko Haram must stop.
In the wake of these threats, Africa's economic gains are in danger. Is it time for global war on terror focused on Africa? This week in Talk Africa. Four people have been killed and several others injured after clashes erupted in several Egyptian cities on Friday. Supporters of deposed President Mohamed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood took to the streets to demand the end of army-backed rule. The marches were the most ambitious attempt by the Brotherhood to press its demands since August 14th, when authorities smashed two pro-Morsi sit-ins in Cairo and then declared a state of emergency. Medical sources said one Brotherhood supporter had died from a gunshot wound in clashes in the center of the capital. Onlookers threw rocks at the pro-Morsi supporters who hurled them back. Riot police had earlier fired tear gas to push back the march. Fighting also took place in Alexandria and two Nile Delta cities.
We want our vote. We want our rights. We protested for 5 consecutive times and then 3 more times, and we stood for 2 or 3 hours on the streets to express our opinion. Then some, I don't want to use insulting words, came, and because they have a gun and a tank, they pushed us aside. How can this happen? How can this work?
Well, let's get more now from CCTV's Yasser Hakim joining us live from Cairo. Yasser, what is the latest? Are the clashes still going on around the country?
No, right now it's a bit calm, relative speaking to yesterday. Yesterday there were 5 dead, you said 4, but actually the official figures right now that have come today out of the Ministry of Health is that 5 were dead, 1 from the Muslim Brotherhood supporters and 4 from the residents in Shubra area where the clashes took place yesterday. The fiercest of the clashes took place yesterday. Of the 40 injured was the spokesman of the National Salvation Front, Khalid Dawood, who is a regular guest at CCTV. He's been stabbed by some of the pro-Morsi supporters as he was passing by close to one of their demonstrations. But he is fine. He underwent a surgery and he is fine today, expected to be out of hospital in the next few days. As for today, only one march took place in front of Al-Azhar area where the Pope of Egypt has been visiting the head of Al-Azhar, Pope Tawadros, and they were just criticizing the Pope for his backing of the military against the former president Mohamed Morsi. Other than that, the situation is still calm, probably preparing for tomorrow's celebrations and also demonstrations from the pro-Morsi supporters.
All right, so let's talk about tomorrow. As you mentioned there's more demonstrations that have been planned. Do we have the details about that?
The Muslim Brotherhood supporters and the Morsi supporters tried to enter Tahrir Square yesterday in one of their demonstrations where a lot of clashes also happened there. The army decided that they blockaded the Tahrir off. No one is allowed in or out of Tahrir. So what we've been told is that the Brotherhood will probably, their supporters will probably move to other areas tomorrow, basically maybe to Mohandisin and also trying to go back to Rabaa Square, trying to show that they are still present, strong in the streets. So there will be an attempt, as we've been told, by the Morsi supporters to try to return and create another sit-in in Rabaa Square as a psychological power and boost for their supporters. And also what they're doing right now is that as they are not able to deploy thousands or large numbers at the same time, they sort of organized scattered demonstrations in many areas, 50 to 100 in every street on many areas at the same time. They would blockade the streets, they would cut off the roads, and this would give an impression, it would stop or could cause a standstill in the whole of the city when you've got scattered demonstrations in many areas at the same time. And I think that is the plan for tomorrow. The problem is the other side, the anti-Morsi, the anti-Brotherhood supporters, are now calling for demonstrations tomorrow, or what they call celebrations of the 6th of October victory, which was a victory by the military in the 1973 war. So we could expect even more clashes and maybe more casualties, because if they go down to the streets and you have the Morsi supporters in the streets, so there could be clashes expected for Sunday.
All right, yes, I will be watching that as well quite closely. Yasser Hakim, live in Cairo. Now, this year's One Young World is coming to a close in Johannesburg later today. At the forum, global youth and leaders exchanged ideas on how to tackle critical issues facing the world. One of those issues is hunger. Lauren Bush is among the leaders attending this summit. The granddaughter of U.S. President George H.W. Bush is the founder of FEED, which has provided over 60 million meals for people everywhere. James Chow spoke to her.
Lauren Bush, if we think about words like empowerment, change, hero, inspiration, these are words that are often bandied about, but big words that sometimes people don't really understand. For a very different reason, though, hunger is one of the words that we use very often. In your role as an activist, as a founder of FEED, what does hunger mean to you?
You know, I really have seen the faces of hunger, people who wake up every day and don't necessarily know where their next meal is coming from. And children, just because of where they're born, you know, are born into a life of chronic hunger and malnutrition. And it's kind of crazy because, like I said, food and nutrition are something so basic for human life, yet it's not a given for about 870 million people around the world.
Whether you're in the United States or whether you're in, say, Chad, what are the issues that are linked to hunger?
Each country, each region, each community has its own struggles. So we certainly have our own struggles with food security in America, but they're very different than food security issues in Chad, for example. So there's really not a one solution fits all for the world. That would be wonderful. But there are a lot of really hopeful programs that are making a big difference.
When you think about FEED and what it's able to achieve today, how can FEED support the vision of a world without hunger in Africa, without hunger specifically?
We're a social business, and our mission is to create good products that help feed the world. And we also have a nonprofit arm as well. So we're both a for-profit nonprofit, which is becoming kind of more of a standard model these days. But we work through partners on the ground. So we work with the World Food Program, with UNICEF, with Feeding America now in America, and with smaller NGOs that are, doing more kind of grassroots programs.
So talk to me about your bag, and let's have a look and see what it looks like.
Sure. This is the Feed One bag. It's the original bag, and it feeds one child in school for a year for every bag purchased.
I'm smiling because you described FEED as a small business. I think it's not such a small business. Share more on how you've been able to create a life here, a family or products and a vision that maybe has been adjusted as you've gone along.
I'm very much involved in the design of everything we put out, and it has to be, true to the aesthetic. It was always, I used burlap in the initial bag because I wanted it to look, to mirror the cause in some way. So I was inspired by seeing the bags of food being distributed around the world, and I like that kind of utilitarian look.
Lauren Bush, good luck. Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, many youth attending the One Young World Conference relish the chance to gather input from speakers and debaters alike to expand their thinking. Here's what a few of the delegates had to say.
There are a lot of people out there, scientists in particular and engineers, who have great ideas and who deserve people who have skills like the One Young World delegates, who are perhaps more comfortable in front of a camera, more comfortable talking to a big audience, and to give those scientists and engineers a stage.
In the absence of great sportsmen and great celebrities that you can use for your projects, how do you make these issues attractive to the normal person so that they too can participate, because these are issues that affect us on a daily basis? And again, how do we get these issues centralized and integrated into the school system, because like I said, these are everyday issues that anyone can participate in, but how do we get them on that scale where kids learn about conservation areas on an everyday basis?
My concern is that whether we are looking into poverty in a correct way. How about because poverty, to my understanding, is a monster with many tentacles extended to different aspects of human lives. It also could be the inability of people to convert or transform their entitlements, such as healthcare or education, into actual capabilities that transform people's lives. You know, it could be employment, it could be freedom of expression, it could be feeling of happiness, well-being. So that aspect, that multidimensional aspect, is not being captured in the development agendas.
Guinea's opposition called on Friday for the annulment of the parliamentary elections held on September 28, alleging that the vote had been tarnished by widespread fraud. The opposition coalition had earlier already warned the government of President Alpha Condé and his Rally of the Guinean People, the RPG party, against tampering with votes. Partial results after last Saturday's election gave the lead to Condé's party. The ruling party, meanwhile, said it was confident that it would have a majority in parliament after the vote results are announced. The vote took place after many delays and was preceded by violent protests as the opposition accused Condé of planning to rig. Still in West Africa, the 12th Congress to elect the new president of the Democratic Party of Cote d'Ivoire, PDCI, kicked off on Thursday amid tension. 4 candidates in the race include the incumbent Henry Konan Bédié. Bédié and Ouattara are 2 principal allies within the ruling RHP-DP coalition. Many political activists urged Bédié to step down, but he insisted on remaining in the race. Analysts say if Bédié loses the elections at this Congress, it could be a big blow to President Alassane Ouattara, who will lose a strong ally ahead of 2015 elections. Bédié was president of Cote d'Ivoire from 1993 to 1999, and his PDCI party helped Ouattara defeat Laurent Gbagbo in the 2010 presidential election. Tunisia's crisis talks between ruling Islamists and their secular rivals are set to kick off on Saturday. The two sides have been bitterly divided in the 2 months since the killing of a prominent MP, Mohamed Brahmi, with secularists accusing the moderate Islamist Ennahda party of failing to curb extremists in the birthplace of the 2011 uprising. Earlier this week, Ennahda and the secular opposition agreed to a blueprint for talks drafted by the country's main trade union. The roadmap sets a 3-week deadline to form a cabinet of independence to replace the government after the launch of a dialogue with opposition parties. It also sets a 4-week deadline for adopting a new electoral law, announcing a timetable for fresh elections and completing a long-delayed draft constitution. Are you watching Africa Live? Let's take another break straight ahead.